You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Fezcast, and joining me for this recording is the return of Alex. Hi Alex, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Excellent. We were discussing off air, you've got your university offers all in place and everything like that, and so you've obviously been busy when the women have been on their fallow period of the season.
Yeah, it's good. Good opportunity for me to do my mocks when there was no distractions.
Oh, excellent. And obviously they went all well for you.
Yeah, they were good.
Excellent, that's good stuff. And also joining us is, well, regular super sub, but I think, to be perfectly honest with you, Loxy, we can probably call you a permanent member of the team now. And I think, you'll get added to the WhatsApp group now. So, I mean, that's you, Kirst. But Loxy's joining us because you were at the Prem Rugby Cup match against Leicester on the weekend, weren't you? And obviously, we heard you on the telly at the women's game yesterday.
Oh, that's good. Good evening, Jez. Good evening, Alex. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be back. Yes, I was at both games.
Fantastic. Well, look, what I thought we would do is we'd have a chat, first of all, about the Six Nations, because there was Saracens' involvement. And, I mean, we'll come on to him a bit later on. I mean, who thought that Rhys Carey would be the one we came out with perhaps the most credit on the Six Nations? But, I mean, let's start with England, shall we? We go up to Scotland. Scotland do what they always do, Loxy. They get up for the old enemy, which means that next week when they play Wales, they'll probably not bother again, which is intensely irritating. And it's intensely irritating for the simple reason that I actually want Scotland to be competitive across all matches and not just to have bagpipes going, kilts wearing, Mel Gibson, Braveheart to get them to win a game of rugby.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I mean, and there's a lot of potential there as well with Scotland. But this whole thing about we've beaten England, therefore that's it. Well, it's not much of an attitude really in sport. It
isn't. But the other thing is, Alex, we knew that's what Scotland were going to bring to the game on the weekend, and England. Well, me and Loxy were saying off air that Plan A didn't work and we couldn't change it up. I don't think in the first 20 minutes we were given even an opportunity to implement Plan A, were we?
No, I think we almost didn't expect Scotland to come at us with that intensity when we should have expected. They do against England. They would have been hurt by the loss to Italy. So actually, we should have expected for them to come at us with the intensity that we did. And we just didn't have anything to counter it with.
No, I mean, that's a real big problem. And the first issue came really, I felt, without mentioning the referee, who I thought, Harry Arundel, Loxy, he was unlucky with the first yellow because I thought he did get to his feet. There was a clear release and he did get his hands on the ball. I thought that was very unlucky. But then he was lucky with the second yellow that it wasn't a straight red.
Yeah. A lot of people seem to have issues with the whole carding situation with Henry Arundel, whether he should have had a card at all, whether it should have been more. I don't think I'd care to comment much more about it. The referee's the person on the spot. It's a difficult job, we all know. And it's a pity. I mean, it was obviously going to have an effect, wasn't it, on the game?
Yeah, and it did. But I think our problems were a lot more intrinsic than that. And my first point, Alex, is that front row, Joe Hayes did nothing wrong. He's okay. There's no problems there. He's there to do a job, and he did his job. And actually, we put the Scottish front row on toast. And the fact that they won a game without having a front row being able to compete at scrum time is quite impressive. But Ellis Genge, lost the head again twice in this game, and he's becoming a liability. Which, if you were an inexperienced prop coming in, fair dues, but he's a vice captain on the field. But the biggest problem was, and it's our first mention of a Saracens player in relation to the England game, was the player who wasn't playing because Jamie George was on the bench, and I'm afraid to say Luke Cowan-Dickie never has been, never will be, and isn't at the moment an international class player.
No,
Discuss,
I
Alex.
think Jamie should have probably started that game, but actually also thinking, looking at bringing new players through. We know Jamie's, gonna retire after the next World Cup. So actually, why aren't we starting to bring players through? Cowan-Dickie's not really up to his international level. So actually, use the Six Nations to start trying to bring new players through rather than just sticking with the same hookers that we've had for the last several years.
Yeah, I mean, I've never rated LCD. I really don't, and I think what typified his performance, Loxy was giving away a penalty for a no arms tackle at somebody's ankles. That, when England were getting back into a bit of ascendancy and everything seemed to be working, and there were moments in the game where England's performance was what you expected and Plan A was working. But there's another problem there that you've got players on the field like Ellis Genge, like Luke Cowan-Dickie, who are senior players who are not giving the support to the skipper, Maro Itoje, but also by the same, turn that on its face as well and offer the opposite thing. Maro's head's not quite there, is it? I don't think at the moment. And Maro is looking like he needs a break from rugby. Similar a little bit to Owen Farrell when contractual mention, when Owen decided that he needed to step away. Maro's got a lot going on his plate. I don't know whether it helps him appearing on magazine covers. I'm sure it's all to do with setting himself up and his family up and everything. But, his mother's recently died. He's had to fly back to Nigeria. Saracens are not performing perhaps the way they should do. There's a lot of pressure as the England captain. It just seemed to come to a head to me on Saturday, Loxy.
Yeah, a few people have just said that he didn't look the part as captain. It's not just that. I mean, he was dragged into a discussion about race, wasn't he, because of some ill-conceived remarks, and his opinion was sought on it. And I ended up thinking, much as you did, about the magazine cover. I thought Crumsy really could do without this at the moment. Yeah, it's not that long since he lost his mum. It was only mid-December time. And then you look beyond that and you think, well, who was the vice captain? Oh, blimey, it's Ellis Genge, who's clearly got a head full of a whole lot of stuff at the moment because he's come under incredible scrutiny before what has happened to him previously in the Welsh match. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, he looks like a man out of sorts, very much. He needs to step away to get his head straight, I think. Maro, really, if you look about it, ever since he was a late teenager, how many breaks from rugby has he actually had? I mean, he's been a perpetual Lions tourist. He's been a fixture in the England side, clearly played for Saracens whenever he was available, and hasn't really been injured all that often. So I genuinely think he would have needed a rest, full stop. But now I think things have come to a head for him emotionally. And these are things you can't quite control. I mean, it's all right for people to say, oh, pull yourself together, but that's not how it works. That's not how things feel. That's not how involuntary things creep into your life and your work. And Maro definitely needs a little bit of sympathy and understanding at the moment, and just keep throwing him up to the plate probably isn't the best idea.
No, I mean, I could easily see Alex Murrow coming back to Saracens after the Six Nations, and if someone at the club's got any sense, they'll turn around and say, and by that point, the season might be over for us anyway, and just say, Murrow, get away, go and have a break because you need that break.
Yeah, and it's not going to help Saracens if he's not playing, at his top level. And actually, we'd say, you have a break. We've got other players who can cover for you. We've got other people who can captain. And actually, it's what's best for you, and it's not going to harm the team dramatically.
Yeah, which is why I think perhaps Owen Farrell being around the squad might make Mark McCall and the coaching staff's job easier in that case, because you've got a man there and Jamie George ready to step up and actually, take that mantle and perhaps take a little bit of pressure off of. I mean, Loxy, you'll remember the years ago that in the world of cricket, Grand Gooch stepped up to be Essex captain and spent a couple of seasons, couldn't quite get it right. Keith Fletcher came back, took back over, and then Gucci came back 2 years later after that, and then became an exceptionally good Essex and England cricket captain.
Yes, he did. And there was another man who had to put up with external pressures because he went on a rebel tour, didn't he, to South Africa? And, there was no question that he was badly affected by the commentary surrounding that. So we know these things, these great sports people can be affected. They're ordinary people at the end of the day with the same feelings as everyone else.
Yeah, they are indeed. Now, the last person to mention in relation to England, and this will probably have upset Duncan again, because Duncan's comment the week before was that when Ben Earl was one of the players of the match against Wales, Ben Earl stood up. Whilst he wasn't as effective as perhaps he normally has done, he put the effort in, got a try, and worked hard again, which Duncan has wondered whether he's put the same amount of effort in for Saracens, Alex.
I think his role in the England squad is different to what it is at Saracens because of the players that each team's got. But I think definitely in the Scotland game, he put in a lot of effort, and all the forwards had to after Arundel got red carded, because actually we had to put in the defensive shift to cover the fact we were missing a player.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, with 14 players for that period of the game, England weren't actually that far off of Scotland. Everybody's saying that Scotland were fantastic, David. I'm not sure that they were quite as fantastic. And indeed, my friend Graham Smith pointed out that, the fact that Scotland really didn't have a front five to speak of that could compete, it was individual brilliance. 20 minutes, 25 minutes from Finn Russell. The centres had their moments, and Stein on the wing had an absolute blinder, didn't he?
Yeah, it's a funny thing with England at the moment. I think, do we actually expect too much of them? Or are they really as disappointing on occasion as all that? I mean, are they too hyped up? Are they too built up? I mean, I look at that side and I look at the players in it, and I just think that they should be functioning better than they do. And this is probably a point I'm going to come back to a little bit later on. But you look at the players there, and that really shouldn't have happened. You shouldn't be attituded out of a game by a side that you're clearly better than.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the only other thing to say is that, in the Six Nations, you go away, and unless you're playing Wales away at the moment, you shouldn't expect to win, though, you should have the right attitude to be more competitive. Let's look elsewhere, shall we? And first things first, Alex, I want to mention the Italy-Ireland game. I mean, as in the playing side of it, I thought Italy unlucky, Ireland's unimpressive. But the person who was very impressive in that game, and I think she's slowly becoming, if not the best, one of the top 3 or 4 referees in the game, full stop. And that's Holly Davidson, who had an absolutely stonking game, I felt.
Yeah, and I was surprised it was the first time she's reffed in the Men's Six Nations, because she's obviously done assistant refs and stuff before, but I thought she'd done it before. And I think, she could have easily kind of let the pressure get to her, but actually she kept her cool and managed the players really well throughout the whole 80 minutes.
Yeah, she did. And I mean, she got the big calls absolutely right. And there's something we'll go on to in the women's game about head-on-head contacts, but she got that one right. Just because you got barrel backwards 150 mile an hour, it was still Craig Casey's error there, which is why the mitigation was found. She got the Dan Sheehan trying to high jump over a ruck completely right. He's got to stop doing that, because, we all cheered when he did it for the British Lions, but it's dangerous and reckless play, and it might not injure another player, Loxy, but it will certainly, in the same way as Luke Cowan-Dickey throwing himself at people's ankles, will affect him, if not now, certainly in later life.
Yeah, yes, it will. It is reckless to everybody surrounding the whole action, really. And as for Holly Davidson, I mean, I couldn't admire her more than I do. I think she's a fabulous referee. I did have some issues, I think, when she did the Saracens game at home. She had a tendency to get into the passing lane at times, but she seems to have sorted that one out very quickly and managed not to get herself buried under a couple of large locks, which was very amusing in the Saracens games once she actually got up. Yeah, she's a composed character. She's calm. And I think actually having her there with her calm demeanour affects the players around her. I think they behave themselves better when she referees, and I think they actually perform better when she referees. I've never seen a game of rugby that Holly Davidson refereed that wasn't a good game of rugby. I mean, to me, she's a top class referee.
Indeed. And it was very magnanimous and well said by Michele Lamaro afterwards when he paid tribute to her. And I hope long may that continue. Looking at the last game, though, I mean, we do 3-word reviews often, don't we? But I mean, France amazing, Wales poor. That's 4 words, isn't it? But I mean, it does. Wales are in an absolute mess. I mean, there were some bright spots for them. I thought Rhys Carey, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you know, expected him to be the best Saracens player perhaps on international duty this weekend. But he got a try. He kept the scrum honest, and he looked pretty impressive around the park. He made a couple of bursts and a couple of big tackles, didn't he, Alex?
Yeah, and I think, you know, Wales have some of the individual players that can do brilliant things. They just don't have a full squad who can do that for 80 minutes and properly put the pressure on. So actually, France just exploited that and could, you know, rack up a big scoreline.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it, Loxy? And Alex has made a really good point there. They do have some individual players, and I think they've now got to show faith with those individual players and realise that for the next 3 or 4 years, they may well struggle. They may well be like Italy were 5 years ago and be the whipping boys of the tournament. But, you know, we often say in defeat, you learn more than victory. And young lads like Dan Edwards and Eddie James, and even Louis Rees-Zammit, who you would say is a more experienced player, but he's had a couple of years out playing NFL. He's come back and he's playing in a brand new position for him, really, at fullback. And it's not, you know, it's not just playing back three. It does take some getting used to. And if your third game at fullback is only your second game internationally in that position, I think he's doing pretty well. You know, but I think the problem is that I think Wales have got to make a decision on this, scrap the 25 cap rule and say to players like Dan Edwards and Eddie James, if you can find a club in England that'll take you on, or in France, or in Ireland, or in Scotland, or wherever you're going to get better quality rugby, take that opportunity and we will support you and we will pick you regardless of whether you're playing in Wales or not. And then use the Welsh regions that are struggling financially more than anything else. Use them as a breeding ground for the next generation to come up and have some 20-year-olds playing in the Welsh regions and 19-year-olds. And you know, they've just got to take a long-term view of it, which we know doesn't happen in Wales very often because Max Boyce will pipe up sooner or later. And it's all about short-term gains, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you said it all there, to be quite honest. I mean, that is the root cause of the problem. The fact that they allow the game to be structured the way it is in Wales and seem very wedded to a bunch of ideas that have been proven as failures. Rhys Carey is enjoying his rugby. He came to us as a man who wasn't enjoying his rugby. He's now a man who does enjoy his rugby, and he just goes out and does what Rhys Carey does with a fairly carefree attitude, but he's very effective in all of that. And there, you know, you mentioned a couple of fine young players there who really could do with the benefit of a bit more experience around them, something to drive them forward, help them develop their skills. It's in the hands of the people who govern the Welsh game, isn't it? And right now, if they stick to this model, they really can't expect an awful lot more going forward, I don't think.
No. Well, we could talk about this forever and a day, but this is a Saracens fans podcast, so I suppose we best get on with that. So we'll take a quick short break here, and then we'll come back and discuss, well, what was a bit of a damp squib, really, at the end of the day, against Tigers in the Prem Rugby Cup.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And joining me is Loxy and Alex to discuss the Prem Rugby Cup. And Alex, you and me, I think we could take a back seat here, didn't we? Because I don't think either of us saw much of this, did we, Alex?
No, I didn't see any of it.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, let's hand it all over to Loxy. I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is, Loxy, that, I mean, social media at the moment is quite interesting, isn't it? Because we've gone a bit really big balls. And even, you know, I saw the post about Teo Adigabibeli, or however you pronounce his surname, and I really do apologise to Teo, so I'm just going to call you Teo from now on, being blindside bully. And, you know, it's all well and good coming up with all these posts, but if you don't follow it up with a result, then you look a little bit silly, don't you?
Yeah, it just looks like pointless bragging. Teo is an incredibly good player, and yeah, he contributed well. But this particular game, well, let's put it this way: we've had 2 home games in a row, haven't we? We've taken 4 points out of a possible 10. Now that's going to tell a story on its own. This one, really, I went into it thinking that Tigers probably would win it. I wasn't that confident, but like so many other things this season, we flattered to deceive a little bit. Now, I don't know whether Tigers forgot to actually turn up for the first half, or certainly a decent proportion of it, but Saracens did go in 12-7 up at half-time, and it looked quite reasonable. I've got to say that the day started well before that. There was an early start, and the Saracens under-18s beat Newcastle Red Bulls under-18s 53-29. So if we get too gloomy at this particular segment, at least there's something going on underneath this lot that seems to be quite promising. But I made a point earlier, didn't I, that I look at the names on the piece of paper, and then I struggle to understand why the best isn't being got out of them on the field. Because this particular group, you're not talking about people who are massively inexperienced there. I mean, even the people who are youngest, I mean, the Louis Johnsons, yes, he should have had more rugby at Saracens, I certainly think, and a few others do. But he's not an inexperienced player. He put in some decent shifts at Newcastle before he came. And when he does play for Saracens, you know, he contributes fully. You know, you've got Brandon Jackson there, who's not inexperienced. I mean, he's been about. I don't know whether Matt commented on your group, but the first try from Tommy Reffel was scored up his wing, where I was trying to work out where exactly he was. Matt was quite strongly dismissive of his positional play, wasn't he, last week? And I didn't see much to actually counter that, because when I wrote the game up, I actually said that another try was scored down that side, despite the strictures of the Fezcast last week. So, you know, there are some lessons not being learned. Gareth Simpson's dad, Grant, who is a very experienced coach of collegians in South Africa, which has provided some very good players for the Prem currently, including Luke Davidson, who went to the same school as Gareth Simpson, well, years after him. He said the previous week against Quins that they were honeypotting in defence, i.e. that they were all gravitating towards the ball, for the listeners who might not understand it. It's a bit like watching under-12s football. Yeah, there's the football, and everybody's gathering around it like ants, you know. And this was quite noticeable. Now, if that was happening again this week, and I did see a couple of instances of it, I'm wondering why. Because, you know, if you've got people like Loz, who looked out of sorts at fullback, I'm going to say, if you've got people like Ollie Hartley in the centre with Nick Tompkins, and you've got Rotimi and Brandon as your wingers, there shouldn't be an issue, really, with chasing towards the ball. These are not beginners. Now, I'm going to excuse Rotimi from any blame or responsibility. He was brilliant again. But the thing was, he's standing out slightly negatively now. He's by far the best player because the others around him are not necessarily performing as well as they probably should be. Why that is, I'm not quite sure. But we've even got players who were playing quite well who seem to have fallen off from 2 games ago.
Yeah, it's a real worry, isn't it? Because I just feel, and I don't know, Alex, I mean, you've not been involved for a couple of months now because of, the women's not being around there, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of the men's games and has been as disappointed as we have with some of, I don't know whether it's attitude or whether it's application or whatever it is, but we just seem to have been this season almost. And I think we're in danger of being in the whole season and just saying, well, we can't get relegated. We know that even if we did luck out and got a top 4, that'll probably be the most we could have of this season. We're not certainly going to compete with the big boys when it comes to a final or whatever. And it's like, the attitude just isn't right. And it's almost getting to the point that everybody seems to think the end of this season couldn't come soon enough. Am I being fair, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's almost as if we're not guaranteed top 4. And so we're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. But actually, we need to keep building because what we do this season will affect what happens next season and the players we can attract, but also how we start next season and giving players minutes and time to make those connections on the field. So I think, it's about refocusing, say we might not make top 4. If we do, we won't, probably get a home semi. So actually, can we just make the most out of this season? So next season, we can properly try and compete for those top 4 slots.
I mean, yeah, and I completely agree with your point of view there, Alex. And me, if I was playing, that would be completely my attitude. I just think it seems to be, there seems to be this disconnect almost, Loxy, now that Mark McCall said, right, that's it. This is my last season doing this. And everybody, we're seeing players are now leaving. And we've heard that Marco Riccioni's off to France now next year. And it just seems like everything's just a bit, ugh. And I mean, I saw that we talked a little bit about social media, didn't we? I've seen 2 social media posts saying 30,000 tickets is it sold for the Tottenham Stadium against Saints. And then they're saying, we'll see you Leicester Tigers in a couple of weeks. Tickets are going fast. It'll sell out within 48 hours. I don't believe it for a minute. I just think that this general sort of like malaise almost is seeping out. And, we know that the likes of yourself and Nigel Eaton and John Timms and other season ticket holders will be there regardless. But if you're me having to travel 100 miles there and 100 miles back, at the moment, it would be very hard. I can't do it because obviously I'm looking after Sharon, who had her hip replaced last week. But, it's very difficult for people who are perhaps a little bit more, shall we say, irregular in their support at the grounds to justify spending a lot of money if you're going to turn up and nobody's really going to be that bothered almost.
If you're an absolute diehard, yeah, of course that's going to come into consideration. And I know that troubles the CEO of the club in the public meeting that he held. But there's got to be a greater understanding of what does affect people who turn up or don't turn up for rugby matches. I mean, going back to this particular game, I've heard a certain amount of criticism levelled at Alex Thomas, the referee. Now, I'll pin my colours to the mask. He's not my favourite referee. I've seen him referee a few women's games and I've come away a little bit underwhelmed. I wouldn't put him in the class of a George Selwood or a Joe James, who are currently refereeing at the same level. Those are exceptional referees, in my opinion, and I think they will become excellent referees as they start to move up forward, which they're both doing. But here's the thing. We had I think I calculated we gave away 9 penalties in the red zone. I mean, let's put aside the fact we were winning 12-7 at half time, because we weren't in the second half at all. Leicester just upped their intensity about 3 times and just took us to the cleaners in many ways. So there were at least 9 penalties in the red zone conceded by us, and we didn't so much as get a warning. And I couldn't believe, actually, because he's one of these referees, if you score a try, he forgets about the accumulated penalties either side of it. And it's almost like he goes back to count one. And that's not how it works.
No.
So there we are. We're getting away with murder, in my opinion, for all of those people who think, that he wasn't helping us out. And I think he did for an hour, very much so. The problem with what he did, he tended to backload it because he clamped down quite late in the counts. So when we got into double figures, really, then he started sending people off. So we ended up losing Tai Tuimaga and Nick Hizikwe very, very late in the game. And we were 13 against 15 at one point. Now, I've got to say, Saracens' old boy, Tom Whiteley, committed one of the worst professional fouls I think I've ever seen. And very uncharacteristic of Tom, who was playing at number 10, by the way, not a scrum half. He did play 10 a few times for us. Brandon Jackson, in the middle of dreadful pressure, pulled off a stunning interception and set off with the ball. Now, Tom's pretty quick. He sort of got to Brandon round about halfway. Brandon kicked it on. And when the ball was about 30 or 40 feet in front, he tackled Brandon and took him to the ground. That was one of the easiest yellow cards I've ever seen. But, of course, Tom came back quite late in the game when the other two had been sent off. So we went 14 against 14. Then we went to 13 against 15. Now, we were 2 players down, so we inevitably conceded late tries on the line, and we couldn't fight back 2 players down. So, at the end of the day, it wasn't a massive defeat. It's like so much else. It's flattering to deceive in many ways, because you're talking about a loss of 26-31. So there's 2 points. We scored the obligatory 4 tries. In fact, Alex Lazowski, Teo Adegili, I can't pronounce it either. Teo, Rotimi Shegan got a couple. Louis Johnson slotted 3 out of 4. Was replaced by Fergus, who immediately came on and kicked a ball straight out and missed the conversion, which won't do his critics. Well, it'll give his critics a bit of fuel, won't it? And probably didn't do Louis any harm to leave the game at that point. But the fact is, we were winning that game. The scrummage was dominant in the first half. Phil Brantingham had a very good game all told, but I mean, he went straight through his opposite number. At loose head, he went straight through his opposite number right at the very end of the half when we were under pressure. Totally saw an end to that. So they were good things. And Phil Brantingham was one of the bright spots. But you're talking about bright spots. Teo had his moments.
Yeah.
There's people having their moments. We're scoring 4 tries. We're staying within 7 points. But we didn't play that second half. We were dominant in the first half. And the scrummage, which had been so dominant when Harvey Beaton was on, suddenly became, it started moving backwards at quite a pace. And all I can say is our intensity dropped and Leicester's rose at the same time. And I can't put my finger on why that happened. We emptied the bench. We emptied the bench. That had about 10 seconds of decent effect. Then we started dropping the ball all over the place. And then we were back under pressure again.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an element of we invite pressure on ourselves. Now, obviously, coming up next is Northampton Saints away. We got to win that game and hope results go our way. I don't think we go there with any intention of winning that game. I think we'll put a bunch of kids out and see what happens. And, that's life. This is one we're throwing away. And I think that's the most disappointing thing about it. But let's leave the disappointment, shall we, guys? Have another break there. And then we'll come back and discuss a fabulous comeback win from Saracens Women against Bristol Bears on Sunday.
Hey, it's Charlie Hodgson, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to our last part, and we'll discuss the best highlight of the weekend, which is Saracens Women coming and getting a fine bonus try scoring point win against Bristol. But Alex, again, not without its issues, shall we say, because Bristol Bears, well, it looked like we were the away team. We were stuck somewhere around Brent Cross for the first 20 minutes, didn't it? Bears came out of the traps and absolutely blitzed into a 26-0 lead within 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I think we just didn't know how to kind of counter Bristol's attack because they've got powerful players. So we were committing 2 or 3 players to each tackle, but actually it'd take us a couple of meters to get players down. And then we couldn't attack the ruck because we had to get ready for the next tackle. And Bristol don't kick the ball, and we know that. So actually, we needed to find another way to get the ball, and that came in the scrums because we had the upper hand in the scrums. But actually, we needed to find other ways to get the ball, which we started doing towards the end of the first half. But by that point, Bristol were already 26 up, and actually, we had a fight on our hands in the second half to actually get the win.
Well, we did. And I mean, I think, there was a lot of good things that we did in that comeback win, Loxy. The first thing I wanted to mention is that I think Bristol Bears, one will look at this as a huge, huge missed opportunity. And one that they can actually pin upon themselves a little bit because I just thought they got a bit cocky. I mean, they lit up the cigars, and Sarah Byrne was the prime example of that because if you saw Sarah's smirk, I was going to say smile, but it wasn't. It was a smirk. It was, and it was bordering on the arrogant when she scored her second try because she got up and she was giving it. And it's great because she was showing some character and everything like that. But I think that galvanised our team because they turned around and said, "You are not going to take the mickey out of us any longer," and that. From there, we went straight back up the upper end of the field. And within a minute or so of Sarah Byrne's second try, we'd got a foothold back in the game.
Yeah, I absolutely adore Sarah Byrne. By the way, I won't hear a word said. I won't hear a word said against her. And if I mean, it's the same smile she gave the camera at the end of the game. To be quite honest, having been on the wrong end of it, yeah, we all love Sarah Byrne, and she's a character. And the fact she'd run more than 3 feet for the try probably contributed something towards her reaction. But of course, it galvanised Kelsey Clifford. I mean, she's only going to allow Sarah Byrne to get a couple of tries if she's not going to get a couple of tries. Now, what I've got to say about this, I really don't know why Saracens were so limp at the start of the game. They just really looked like they weren't at it. But then there was a crucial moment where Alex Osterbury walked out of the glass coaching area and sat next to it. Now, I said in the piece that I wrote, you couldn't actually see the steam rising off him, but it was pretty easy to imagine it. I imagine he got out of there because he wanted a bit of fresh air. Now, Kelsey really must be owed a fair amount of drink and rewards by her colleagues for getting those 2 tries before half-time, because heaven only knows what the reaction would have been. And they certainly got a stern talking to. That was pretty universal, and it was made very clear to them that is not the sort of team we are. And with that ringing in their ears, they came out and put things to rights, a little bit like Leicester Tigers did to the Saracens men the previous day. It was a complete change around in intensity and power and everything else. And Alex said the scrum was going well. She's absolutely right. It certainly was going. But no, Kelsey is owed a lot because she took the responsibility with those mauls headed line. She took the responsibility to stick the ball under her arm and make sure she battered her way over the line. It was very clear that she took that responsibility.
Well, indeed, and I think this does link back to the other games that we've been speaking about in the men's, the England men, and also Saracens men. Saracens women at the moment, Alex, do not know how to lose. And as much as other teams who are better than Bristol, and I mean, let's be honest about it, Bristol are in probably a false position in the league, given that they're not near the top 4. but they're not in the top four for a reason, because they haven't been good enough. And they did show why they are down there, because of the way that they allowed us to come back into the game. But better teams, Gloucester Hartpury, Exeter Chiefs, are going to look at that, and they've got a bit of a blueprint there now, haven't they, Alex? That physicality is something that we have struggled with a little bit. And, you know, no disrespect to Marley at number 8, because I think Marley is a fantastic player and she gives you 100% effort. But when Poppy came on and played at 8 and Marley moved over to the open side, we looked like we got that physicality as well that got us back into the game, Alex.
Yeah, I think definitely Poppy coming on gave us that something else, that extra physicality that we needed. But I think also Bristol didn't necessarily have the bench to bring on that could provide that same level of physicality that their starting kind of 15 had. And actually teams like Exeter and Gloucester Hartpury have that bench. They have the whole 23 that will keep up the same intensity, the same physicality. So actually we can't rely on that last 30 minutes of the game to score tries and to kind of get the win. We have to start strong enough that we can win from the start, almost from the start, and that we're not leaving it till the last minute.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I mean, sometimes I think that's perhaps where England fell down in the Calcutta Cup matches, that they had finishers. This old Eddie Jones idea of having players, you keep your best players back. Sometimes, no, you've got to give more respect to the opposition and say, right, we go full tat, you know, and we earn the right to hold on, as opposed to stay in it and give the opportunity to win late on, Loxy. Because against the best teams, as Alex said, particularly Gloucester Hartpury, you won't get that opportunity.
No, you won't. But you know, let's be honest about it. I mean, yes, Bristol are 8th out of 9, which is and they're a fair bit detached from Sale, who are the next team above them, who had previously been bottom 2. But you look at the names around that squad, that's pretty much the same people who've been tormenting us for the last 3-4 seasons, and only 2 seasons ago took us out in a semi-final on our own pitch. So, you know, there would have been a certain amount of trepidation for the Saracens team playing against those particular individuals, I think, because those memories are very hard to shift. And when you've got that particular bunch of people with not much to lose, it makes it a little bit more difficult. I mean, as it turns out, Saracens Women got 5 points. You can't get any more than 5 points. Neil Harris, the scrum coach, said it was ugly. Don't matter. 5 ugly points is 5 ugly points at the end of the day. And giving Bristol 2 is not going to hurt anybody, really, is it? Where they are currently in the table. But you're absolutely right. We can't play like that against the best teams. And I'll go back to a point I've made previously. Thrashing someone by 80 odd points is not very good preparation for the next game. I remember sticking 100 on DMP Sharks and getting absolutely hammered the following week by Exeter. I don't think it puts you in the right headspace. And a brilliant young forward like Jodie Vergeese, and I'm told that's how her name's pronounced, by the way, said she'd never encountered physicality like it in her young career to date, because that was a real test for her. Because if you looked, and you made the good point about power, you looked at them, if you were there live at the match, the Bristol pack were physically much, much bigger. The Bristol forwards were physically much, much bigger. Even by the time Poppy came, they were. So, you know, they're a hard lot. They play it tough. And some good and hard lessons were learned. I can't honestly believe that Saracens Women would start the game like that against Exeter Chiefs Women next week.
No, well, we'll come on to that in a minute. What I want to do, though, is talk about some players who I thought were really, really good from the TV. And I don't know, Alex, whether you picked up on it, but Loxy on the wing, I thought, you know, she was up against 2 very good wingers ahead of her, and particularly Millie David. And then Sophie in the centres, I thought, was absolutely superb. She made every tackle she needed to. And when she got the opportunity to burst through gaps, she took them and she went, didn't she?
Yeah, I think both of them played really well. I think particularly Sophie, she knew she had to step up defensively because of the physicality of Bristol, and she did that and she made her tackles. But I just think Tori Zeller's played really well when she had to come back on for Liv Apps. It's a hard ask for her to do, and actually she kept up the speed of ball and the kind of, speed that we had been playing at with Liv Apps on the field, and actually managed to deliver in that last 10 or so minutes.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we'll talk about Liv because, I mean, we saw it. We mentioned Holly Davidson in the Ireland-Italy game where she sin-binned quite correctly Craig Casey for a head-on-head shot, despite the fact that most of Ireland believed that the Italian Canoni headbutted him. No, he didn't. The onus is on the tackling player to get themselves into the right position. Craig Casey didn't, and the fact that he's only 5'3" and 75 kilos against the number 8 at 6'4" and 110 kilos, he came second and best. That's just it. That was a yellow card for Casey. In the same way, if that had been an international match with TMOs and everything, Liv Apps would have seen yellow for her tackle where she got the head injury because it was head on head. And the fact that the Bristol girl caused her more damage doesn't matter. Liv didn't get her body in the right place, did she, Loxy?
No, she didn't. And you know that I'm absolutely anti-ref bashing, but I'm afraid I'm going to break my own rule today. George Ownsley was a late replacement for that game for Mike Lamb. So Poppy was probably quite pleased not to see Mike Lamb because he's definitely taken against her in a couple of games. But Mr. Ownsley, I thought, was massively out of his depth. Now, he's on the field with world-class players, World Cup winning players of the highest possible quality. Now, I don't know what level Mr. Ownsley generally referees, but he really looked out of sorts in this particular game. Now, it manifested itself in that particular moment. Yes, Liv definitely should have gone off. The fact that she was flat out on the ground, which was quite frightening for a while, fair enough. She went on for an HIA. She failed that first one, and it was like a whiplash one from the gum shield. And we don't know what the final one was because they have a final HIA these days as well, a concluding one. So we don't know where that was. No, she should have gone off. But my biggest beef was letting Ciara Bevan take a tap penalty miles away from the mark and score a try from it.
Well, now, I mean, Matt posted about it because during the game I was moaning like anything about the ref because I thought he had an abysmal game. Apparently, he was a late call-up. And my comment to Matt was he found in the bar? Because I think that's potentially what happened there. Matt came back and said, he was a late and unexpected replacement, and he hasn't got much experience. Apparently, occasional games at National 1 level, which isn't the right preparation for a big clash like this, particularly one that's on the BBC TV as well. That did not show the game in good light. However, it does mean that I can cut him a bit of slack because, fair dues to the lad, he stepped up and said, yeah, I'll do it. And he's done his best. It's just his best. And I think the game improved Alex when he remembered he could be rubbish for both sides, not just for Saracens. Because there was one moment on the telly, and I don't know if you picked it up on the grounds, but they zoned in on Marley Packer, and a decision had been made. And Marley was just shaking her head, laughing, and shaking her head and laughing. And they knew that he hadn't got the experience or the ability to referee that match. And I think what the women did good then is played to that and made his life a lot easier. And it made the game flow a little bit better and allowed us to come back into it.
Yeah, and I think actually after he gave us the warning to say you've had a lot of penalties, actually our discipline improved. So I almost wish we'd got the warning earlier because actually after that, we stopped giving away so many penalties and got back into the game. But I think that, we definitely changed whatever image he was seeing. And actually, once we could force Bristol to concede more penalties, then we could move up the pitch, actually get some possession and start scoring.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right, Loxy. I mean, the rickets he did make were huge. I mean, it doesn't make a spectacle of the game when there's an unfair lack of. I mean, and I'm saying this as an old back row myself. I mean, there's nothing I like more than getting myself into rucks and breakdowns and committing, you know, lots of different fences. And I mean, it's like Holly Davison's got some grief for the one with the new when the second row come on for Ireland where he had his hands on the ball. And everybody's saying, well, she told him to take his hands off the ball, and he took his hands off the ball, and she penalised him. Well, he committed the penalty, and slowed it down. He knew exactly what he was doing. But if there's no genuine competition at breakdown, it just turns it into rugby league, doesn't it? And I think for a lot of the first half, Bristol were allowed to basically just recycle as if it was go to ground, tap it back, halfback comes in, clears out to somebody else coming in, and it ruined it as a spectacle.
Now, there was a moment when you had 5 experienced Saracens forwards with their mouths open, just gawping at him in the second half. And, like they couldn't actually believe their eyes. I mean, it got to the point where nobody was complaining; they just couldn't really believe what was going on. So, as you say, they adapted very well. But I'm afraid to say, did you pick up on the telly a chorus of "You Don't Know What You're Doing"? I think that's the first one I've ever heard at Stonex Stadium. So I'm afraid that a little bit of Gloucester has infected. And I'd hate to admit the fact that I was one of the people singing it, but I was. So I'm afraid the usual suspects, Nige, John, that group, myself, we actually resorted to singing "You Don't Know What You Do." We're totally ashamed of ourselves. Not. It happened. It'll never happen again at Stonex Stadium, I hope. So I absolutely hate it. But I found myself doing it. Now, I mean,
Loxy, you know, you stood next to me at Stonex enough times and listened to me giving advice to the flag boy. So I mean,
you'd have given plenty yesterday, I can tell you.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? And I mean, I think if we look back on it, I mean, I don't think the fault lies with the Merry Whistleblower in this situation. He stood up as a late replacement and said, "I'll do the job." And he's taken a bit of rounds to the kitchen sink, and hopefully he'll learn from it. The problem is, as Matt has said, that's the although he's turned around and said it's a debate he's not suited for. He's got whether it's right. The RFU consider referee appointments for the top and televised level of the women's game to be on a par with the upper end of the community game. Yeah, it's a debate to be had because that's the problem. And this, I think, in putting in a referee like this, they knew this game was televised. Okay, there's lots of referees around. You know, if there a game's big game where you can have TMOs and everything like that. And I mean, I know probably Six Nations are on, so there's a pool of referees that have gone elsewhere. You know, so other referees that perhaps would be refereeing, you know, a referee in the men's game, whatever it may be. But if there was an opportunity that a referee could go down, the replacement, Alex, has to be of the same level. And they should have to make that provision, particularly if it was on the telly. If it was, you know, and no disrespect, if it was Sale versus Loughborough and it wasn't on the telly or anything like that, and they made that choice, that's fair enough. But if it's a key game that's on the telly and the other game that was, you know, on YouTube with Exeter, whoever, you make those provisions, don't you? You plan. It's the tale of the 7 Ps, which is proper preparation prevents poor performance. You know, that's what we need to do in this situation, Alex, because if that was the men's game, even a Prem rugby game, if the Prem rugby referee had gone down and not been able to do it, the replacement that would have come on would have been of an equal standard. And in this case, it wasn't. And that's just disrespecting the women's game, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's, you know, it doesn't make people want to watch it if they're like, well, it's bad quality refereeing, it's not going to be a great game. We want to say we've got good referees, we've got people of the same level across all the games. You know, okay, yeah, we want the best referees on TNT and on BBC, but actually we also want them on every single game. We want consistent refereeing. Yes, this week the referee stepped up, you know, did something that's probably above his level, but actually we need to make sure that we have the pool of referees that we can take from. So if someone's injured or ill or whatever, you can say, right, no, we've got this other person coming in, they're of the same level, it's going to be the same standard of refereeing, and then that's the same consistent refereeing across the season.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as I say, you know, we need to get the message out to the powers that be that these are the sort of things that they need to take into account, because that wasn't good enough. However, Loxy, let's move back to good things and doesn't take the shine off the fact that it was a great win. And the last point I want to make is obviously the key moment that won the game and just shows what a world-class player, a world-class kicker, a world-class mental athlete Zoe is, taking that kick on, which was not okay. It was in front of the posts, but it was a clutch kick, and she absolutely nailed it. And that takes a lion heart to do that, doesn't it? It takes mental fortitude. That takes, that's her 10 years of playing rugby at the very highest level to step up, take that responsibility, and whoosh. Well, that's possibly up there with my moments of the season so far, Loxy.
Yeah, I mean, she is a World Cup winning fly half, isn't she? So, let's face it, the girl can play a bit. There's no question about that. But I'm gonna have one last dig at George. I'm sorry, before I let it go completely. Having let Kira Bevan take the penalty from wherever she liked to tap and go over the line, he then started fiddling around with Zoe's kicking tee. She might have tried to pinch a few inches, but he kept moving it around. And I just thought, for heaven's sake, I think I shouted something out at that point. This is no time to suddenly worry about positioning things, Yeah. So anyway, despite that distraction, and that's a distraction, right? Having the referee fiddling around with your tee when you're trying to place it, she still slotted that kick, and it was very near halfway, that kick. It's a still day, but it took some kicking, and she kicked it. I mean, the only other woman I think who could have kicked it from that distance would be Emma Singh, who could probably kick it from a little further still. But I can't think of many women kickers who had actually made the distance on that kick. So it was a fabulous kick, and it cleared with a bit to spare as well.
To be honest with you, there's a fair few top quality male kickers who can't make that distance either. So fair dues to her. Alex, last comment to you though. It's Exeter up next. It's a bit of a game that has some blood in it, shall we say. It has some fire. It has the potential to be an absolute humdinger. Let's hope we got a good top quality ref, because I think the game will need it, won't it, Alex? But I mean, what do you expect to see from Saracens next week? I mean, Loxy's already mentioned an 81-0 drubbing of Tigers possibly wasn't the best preparation for Bristol Bears, but a tough game like Bristol Bears is a fantastic preparation for Exeter Chiefs, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah, and I think we'll know we need to start fast and we need to make our mark in the game as soon as possible to put Exeter under that pressure and actually say, no, we are the team to beat. We are going to put pressure on you. You can't just rack up a big lead and then defend it. We're going to make you defend us and we are going to score and then build off that, because actually the next 3 games are against other top 4 teams. So we need to be putting the pressure on them because it's a big 3 weeks. We need to be getting the 5 points.
Yeah, and I think that would have been the message that Alex Osterbury gave out. The best coaches have always said, I've always said this, and it's something that I did when I coached. When you've got a result like this, and I'm sure the girls came off that field high as you like, happy with how they came back and everything. I think it's at that point that Alex absolutely still read them the right act and told them that they should never have been in that position. And I'd imagine that, you'd imagine that coaches will give rollickings out when you lose. It's not. It's in those situations there where they've done something really, really good, which they did do really good, where he will turn around and these girls will be under no false impression that next week that start is going to be accepted again. And I fully expect, like you, Alex, to see the girls coming out 150 mile an hour and really put a good performance in, which will be fantastic to see on my birthday weekend. So yeah, all good and doing there. So, but I say, Loxy, Alex, thank you for your time this evening. Recording, obviously we're going out Wednesday morning. It's been fantastic chatting to you guys, and I hope everybody enjoyed our chat and that we weren't too miserable about the disappointments and everything. Yeah, I think we probably were, but I mean, that's the way it goes at the moment, isn't it? I think we're reflecting an awful lot what goes on, but it's great to see you back, Alex, and I'm sure that you'll be on next week as well, talking about the Exeter Chiefs game. And Loxy, good to have you part of the team as ever, mate. And until next week, I'll say thank you, everybody, for listening in, and we'll say goodbye from the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.